Well, it's taken several more weeks than I originally planned, but today I'm going to tell the story of Aislinge Óenguso, or The Dream of Aengus. You may remember that Aengus turned up in the very first story I did in this series, Retelling, and it's the same guy. Actually, this is a pretty interesting story because it kind of belongs to both the mythological cycle, because Aengus is the major character and various other members of the Tuatha De Danann are present, and also the Ulster cycle because Alil and Medb are there, and it's listed as one of the Revscéla or foretales to the Táin. This kind of overlap is one of the reasons why the whole cycle classification can be misleading and of limited usefulness, but I feel like that's a topic for a whole other video. I believe that this text has been dated to roughly the 8th century, but I don't know the details on manuscripts and dating, so take that with the usual grain of salt. Today I'm planning to simply tell the story. I don't feel like it needs the level of explanation that some of the others do, so I'm just going to retell it in my own words and then give a few thoughts at the end. I'll be referring to the protagonist as Aengus rather than Óengus, as it should more properly be for a medieval text, just because Aengus is easier and sounds nicer. And I'm basing this retelling on a translation by Kevin Murray, which is linked in the description if you want to read it for yourself. Before I start, I guess I should probably explain the video title. This is a story about a guy who falls ill with a nasty case of love sickness, and wasting sickness isn't an uncommon affliction in medieval Irish literature. This story's tone is quite romantic and soft, but there are other instances of wasting sicknesses that are distinctly more kinky. Looking at you, Helen, as always. And it was while talking about those stories that my friend Emmett came up with the excellent acronym Birds, Dreams, Sickness and Magic, which is more or less a summary of what happens in this story, so I stole it. Even though it's a joke, I'll probably have to explain to my mum later. Sorry, Mum. So without further digression, here is The Dream of Aengus. One night, while Aengus was sleeping, he had a dream. In this dream, he saw a girl coming towards him, the most beautiful girl in Ireland. He reached out his hand towards her, but before he could touch her, she vanished. And he lay there awake, wondering where she'd gone. Troubled. The next day, Aengus was haunted by the vision of this girl. He couldn't eat, sick with longing for her, desperate for the day to end so that he could dream of her again. And that night she returned. She played music for him, she slept beside him. But when he woke up, there was no sign of her, and he was left only with the memory. For a full year this continued. Every night she came to him, and every day he pined for her, wasting away, speaking to no one, unable to eat or think. Nobody could understand his sudden illness, and they called the physicians of Ireland to treat him, but none of them could get to the bottom of it. Finally, someone called for Fingon, Conchobar's physician. Now, Fingon was such a skilled physician that he could tell from one look at his patient's face what was wrong with them. He could see from the smoke rising out of the chimney how many people were ill inside a house. So it didn't take him long before he had a diagnosis for Aengus. "It's bad luck you have," he said. "You're in love with somebody who isn't here." "Ah, you've diagnosed me right," said Aengus. "And you haven't dared to tell anyone?" said Fingon. "It might have sped things up." "She comes to me every night," Aengus said. "The most beautiful girl in Ireland, and she plays music to me." "Well then," said Fingon, "dream or not, you need to find her, because you'll waste away if you don't. But first we need to call your mother, the Boan, to come and speak with you." So messengers were sent to Boan, and she came. Fingon explained that he was treating her son, but that Aengus was seriously ill with love sickness. He needed her care, and he needed messengers to be sent throughout the country to see if the girl could be found. They searched for her for the rest of the year, but they found no sign of Angus's dream woman. Boan asked Fingon what they should do next, because Aengus was going to die if they didn't do something, and Fingon suggested asking the advice of Angus's father, the Dagda. Now, we met him before, you'll remember, in Retelling, where he seemed substantially more powerful than he seems in this text, but it is the same Dagda. "So why have you called me here?" asked the Dagda when he arrived. "To counsel your son," said Boan, "who is seriously ill with love sickness for a girl we can't find." "What help can I be?" said the Dagda. "I know no more about it than you do." "But you are king of the Sheathmounts of Ireland," said Fingon. "With your authority we can send messengers to Bodv, king of the Munster Sheath, and he is famous throughout Ireland for his knowledge, so if anybody knows where she is, it'll be him." So messengers were sent to Bodv, and he made them welcome. "What do you need?" he asked. "Aengus, the son of the Dagda, has been ill for 2 years with a really bad case of love sickness," they told him. "We don't know where to find the girl he loves, or even if she's real. She visits him in dreams. The Dagda commands you to search Ireland until she is found." "Yeah, okay," says Bodv, "I can do that, but you need to give me a year." So at the end of the year, they send another messenger to Bodv. "Good news," he says. "I found her, a Loch Bail Drachan at Crotakleach. Send word to the Dagda to come and to bring Aengus with him." Now Aengus has now been sick for 3 years, and he's taken to Both's house in a chariot. There is a great feast prepared for them. They spend 3 days and 3 nights feasting, until finally Both said to him, "Come with me now to see the girl. Check she is actually the one from your dreams. But I warn you, I have no power to give her to you. I can only show you where she is." So they went to Loch Drakon, where there were 150 young girls. One of them was much taller than the rest, and they only reached up to her shoulders. That was the one Aengus had seen in his dreams. Between each 2 girls was a silver chain, and each wore a necklace and a gold chain. "Is that her?" said Both. "It is," said Aengus. "That's all I can do for you. I can't help you any more," said Both. "I know," said Aengus. "It's okay. I know I can't take her now, but that's her. Do you know her name?" "That much I know," said Both. "She's Caer Ibermaith, daughter of Ethel Ambwyl, from Shith Uin in the territory of Connacht." That is my least favourite sentence in this story. Aengus went home then, and Both came with him to explain the situation to the Dagda and Bowen, but neither of them could do anything to help their son. "I can't help, but I think I know someone who can," said Both. "Go to Ailill and Medivh. The girl is in Connacht, after all, which is their province, so if anyone can help, maybe they can resolve this." So the Dagda went to Connacht, and Ailill and Medivh made him welcome, with a full week of feasting and drinking. Finally, Ailill said, "It's not that we're not happy to see you, but why are you here?" "It's about a girl," said the Dagda. "My son is in love with her and he's wasting away. I've come to see if you can give her to him. Tell us who she is and we'll see what we can do." "She's the daughter of Ethel Ambwyl." "Nope, we can't," said Ailill and Medivh immediately. "If we could, we would, but that is not within our power." "Well, will you call for Ethel Ambwyl at least?" asked the Dagda. So the messenger was sent to the Sheath to ask its king to come to Ailill and Medivh, but he refused. "I will not give my daughter to the Dagda's son," he said. So the messenger returned to the king and queen. "He knows what you want, and the answer is no," said the messenger. "Then I guess we'll just have to force him," said Ailill, because Medivh wasn't the only one in Connacht with a taste for warfare, and he took his household and the Dagda took his people, and they went into the Sheath and overran it, taking the heads of 60 warriors and bringing the king back with them to their fortress, because mass murder and kidnapping are apparently the main way Ailill seems to know how to handle marriage negotiations. Ailill said to him, "Give your daughter to the son of the Dagda." "I can't," said Ethel Ambwyl. "She's more powerful than me." This was not perhaps what Ailill had expected him to say. He asked what nature this power took, and the Sheath King said, "She spends 1 year in the shape of a bird, and the next year in the shape of a person." "Well, when will she next be a bird?" said Ailill. "I will not betray her like that," said Ethel, who seems, by medieval Irish standards, to have been a relatively good father. "If you don't tell us, we'll kill you," says Ailill. At which point Ethel relented and admitted that the following Samhain he would find her at Loch Drakon in the shape of a bird, surrounded by many other birds and with 150 swans around her. Ailill and Ethel and the Dagda made an alliance then, and they released Ethel, and the Dagda went home to tell his son the news. At Samhain, as he'd been instructed, Aengus went to Loch Drakon, where he saw 150 swans with silver chains and golden curls around their heads. He stood on the shore of the lake and called out to the girl, "Come and speak to me, Caer." "Who calls me?" she asked. "Aengus does," he said. "I will come," she replied, "if you guarantee to me on your honour that you won't stop me from returning to the lake." "I swear it," he said. And she came to him, and he put his arms around her. In the form of 2 swans they slept there, and when they woke they flew around the lake 3 times so that Aengus could be said to have kept his promise, and still in the shape of birds they flew back to Brunaboyne, singing in harmony so beautiful that it's put people to sleep for 3 days wherever they heard it. And she stayed with him after that, and Aengus suffered no more from his lovesickness. And it was because of their help with finding her that there was an alliance after that between Aengus and Ailill and Medivh. And the story tells us that it was in repayment for it that Aengus took 3,000 of his men to fight with Medivh in the Tyne. But although it's on the basis of this connection that Aislinge Óenguso is listed as one of the 4 tales to the Tyne, there is nothing in the Tyne itself to support that connection. Aengus isn't there, even though he does appear briefly in some other Ulster cycle tales, such as Fledbrooken or Meshkutlev, or possibly both, I can't remember. It's a strange story really, because of the way it merges the supernatural landscape of the Sheath Mounds with the tangible world of provincial kings and queens. The Sheath Mounds too seem to reflect this provincial system. There is no single otherworld, there are otherworld beings who inhabit a specific sheath, with the Dagda acting as overking. And even the Sheath Mounds themselves seem to reflect provincial divisions. There's a Munster sheath and a Connacht sheath. This setup isn't too dissimilar to what you'd find in, say, Fianna-Gael material, that is, material belonging to the Finn cycle. Perhaps it's also not dissimilar to Tochfach where we see people belonging to specific sheaths, and certainly there are some motifs in common between the 2 texts, such as lovers transforming into swans. But it's got a very different mood to it. It's a softer story, I think. It's a lot more whimsical and romantic, and I think that's probably why it's so popular with the Celtic Twilight era of scholars and storytellers. Now, personally, it's not one of my favourite stories. It's a little bit too heterosexual for my tastes. But it is intriguing, especially because of this proposed link to the Táin. Does this suggest that there was once a version of Táin Baculinge that featured Aengus as a character? It's very much not impossible, especially because he is referenced in other texts, even if it's only in passing. And it's a reminder that we don't have every version of a story, and that how we slot them together and classify them as modern readers may not even vaguely resemble how a medieval audience understood the corpus of texts as a whole. Perhaps there was once a Táin that had considerably more emphasis on the Tuatha De Danann and the supernatural world, or perhaps this is just the headcanon of the author of Aislinge Óenguso. Perhaps he just thought it would be nice if Aengus was there. We really have no way of knowing, but it's fun to look at stories that highlight these uncertainties and expose the limitations of our classification of texts. Mostly because it reminds us how much there is about medieval literature that we just don't know, and how many gaps there are that we can sort of fill in with our own understandings while acknowledging we will never get a straight answer. Or possibly you don't think that's fun, but I do. So I hope you've enjoyed this retelling, and if you have any questions that I didn't cover in the video, please do leave them in the comments. I will try and be back a little more promptly with my next one, though I'm not sure what I'm going to tackle, so if you have requests, as always, leave them in the comments, in my Tumblr inbox, anything. As ever, there's links to all my social media in the description, and there's also a link to my Ko-fi account, which is the main way anyone supports my ongoing research and videos, because I'm not affiliated with the uni, don't have a monetized YouTube account, don't even have Patreon, so you know, if you've got a few spare pounds lying around, consider donating to my Ko-fi. But if not, no worries, feel free to make requests and ask questions as always, because I have no idea what to tackle next. And I will see you soon. Goodbye!